Teeman Park stood in the center of the Grand Council Hall and looked up at the ceiling that seemed to reach into forever. The hall was built by aliens who loved grand spaces. Thousands of seats rose up in circles around him. Each seat held a different alien species. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some glowed with their own light. Some looked like walking trees. Some were so strange that Teeman could not figure out which. End was the head. He was the only human in the room. The council was arguing again. They had been arguing for 3 hours now. The topic was simple. Should they let new species join the galaxy community faster or slower? But every species had a different opinion. The Mentilians wanted strict rules. The Vexeri wanted loose rules. The Torvulans wanted no rules at all. Taemine waited for his turn to speak. He was good at waiting. Humans had learned patience over thousands of years. Finally, Chancellor Vexera raised one of her 4 arms. The talking stopped. Her skin was blue and covered in patterns that changed color when she was thinking. Right now, the patterns were moving fast. That meant she was annoyed. The human ambassador has been quiet, she said. Her voice echoed through the hall. What does Earth think about expansion rules? Teeman stepped forward. He pressed a button on his wrist device. A small platform rose from the floor and lifted him up so more aliens could see him. Humans were smaller than most council species. Honorable Chancellor, Teeman said. His voice was calm and clear. I believe we should slow down expansion. We should help new species grow at their own speed. We should not force them to join us before they are ready. A loud noise came from the left side of the hall. It sounded like rocks grinding together. That was laughter from the Varathians. They were an old species. Very old. They had built empires when humans were still living in caves. One Varathian stood up. His name was Kelthros. He was a historian and a scholar. His stone-like body was covered in marks that showed his age. Each mark meant 100 years of life. Teeman counted at least 40 marks. The human speaks of slowing down, Kelthros said. His voice was deep and rough. But what does humanity know of expansion? What does humanity know of building empires? You have been in space for only 300 years. My species was traveling between stars when your Earth was covered in ice. Other aliens made sounds of agreement. Some clicked. Some hummed. Some flashlights. Taemin did not look angry. He had expected this. Humans were always the young ones in the council. The new ones. The ones with no history among the stars. You are right, Teeman said. Humans are new to space. But we are not new to empires. Kelthros made a grinding sound. You had tribal wars. Small kingdoms. Nothing more. Do not compare your little conflicts to true empire building. I would like to make a proposal, Teeman said. He looked up at Chancellor Vexera. Give me 5 sessions. 5 chances to speak before this council. I will show you the complete history of one of Earth's greatest empires. An empire that controlled 1/4 of our planet. An empire that shaped everything humanity became. When I finish, the council can decide if humans understand empires or not. The hall became very quiet. Even the species that made constant humming sounds went silent. Chancellor Vexora's pattern swirled in her skin. She was interested now. 1/4 of your planet? That would be millions of square units. Billions of people. Yes, Teeman said. All controlled by a small island nation. Smaller than most cities on your homeworld, Chancellor? Impossible, Kelthros said. A small territory cannot control such a large empire. Not without technology far beyond what humans possessed in your pre-space age. It happened, Teeman said. And I can prove it. I have the records. The documents. The videos. The complete history from beginning to end. Chancellor Vexora looked at the other council leaders. They whispered to each other in languages Timon could not understand. Finally, she turned back to him. Very well, Ambassador Park. The council will give you 5 sessions. Each session will last no more than 3 hours. You will present your evidence. You will show us this empire. Her patterns turned dark red. That was a warning color. But if you fail to prove that humanity understands empire building, there will be consequences. Humanity will lose voting rights in this council for 1,000 years. Do you accept these terms? Timon felt his heart beat faster. 1,000 years was a long time, but he had studied the data. He had prepared for months. This was the moment that would define humanity's future among the stars. I accept, he said, the council session ended. Aliens began floating, walking, and slithering out of the hall. Some looked at Timon with curiosity. Others looked at him like he was foolish. Kelthra stared at him for a long moment before turning away. Timon returned to his quarters, in the human section of the council station. The station was enormous. It orbited a dead planet that was chosen because it belonged to no one. Millions of aliens lived here. Thousands of species, all trying to work together. His assistant was waiting in his office. Her name was Hannah. She was young but brilliant. She had spent 2 years gathering the historical data they needed. Did they agree? Hannah asked. Yes, Timon said. He sat down in his chair. His legs felt weak. 5 sessions. If we fail, we lose our vote for 1,000 years. Hannah's eyes went wide. 1,000 years? Why did you agree to that? Because they need to see the truth, Timon said. The council is making the same mistakes that were made on Earth centuries ago. They are forcing smaller species to join before those species are ready. They are taking resources without fair payment. They are building an empire without realizing it. And empires always fall. Hannah walked to the window. Outside, the stars looked cold and distant. Do you really think we can teach them with one historical example? The British Empire was not just one example, Timon said. It was the perfect example. It had everything: growth, power, wealth, cruelty, resistance, change, and finally an ending. Most species in the council have empires that are still growing. They cannot see the pattern because they are still inside it. But we can, because our empire rose and fell before we ever left Earth. Hannah turned back to him. When do we start? Tomorrow, Timon said. The first session will be about how it began. How a small, rainy island became the most powerful nation on Earth. The aliens think it is impossible. We are going to show them exactly how it happened. That night, Timon could not sleep. He kept thinking about the presentation. Everything had to be perfect. The data had to be clear. The story had to be true, but also interesting. Boring the council would be as bad as lying to them. He got up and walked to his desk. On the screen was a map of Earth from the year 1920. The British Empire was colored in red. Red covered Canada. Red covered India. Red covered Australia. Red covered parts of Africa, the Middle East, and islands scattered across every ocean. It looked impossible. How did such a small nation do this? That was exactly what the council would ask. And Timon would tell them, not just how it happened, but why it happened. And most importantly, what happened when it all came crashing down. He touched the screen and the map changed. It showed Earth in the year 2100. The empire was gone. Britain was just Britain again. A small island. A normal nation, but the lessons remained. And those lessons might save the galaxy from repeating the same mistakes. Timon smiled. Tomorrow would be interesting. The rise of Timon's first presentation stuns the council. He displays holographic recreations of a small island nation called Britain, located on Earth during the pre-space flight era. The aliens watch in fascination as this tiny landmass, barely visible on Earth's globe, begins an impossible expansion. He shows them how British explorers mapped unknown waters in wooden vessels that would be destroyed by a single plasma bolt. How they established trade routes across vast oceans without faster than light travel. How they built an empire spanning 1/4 of Earth's land surface using nothing but determination, ingenuity, and often brutal pragmatism. Ambassador Gorvesh of the Mentilian hegemony interrupts, confused. How could such a small nation with primitive technology conquer so much? Timon's colleague, Dayan Choi, steps forward with economic data. He explains the Industrial Revolution, the concept of mercantilism, and how Britain turned raw materials from distant lands into manufactured goods that gave them unprecedented wealth and power. The alien delegates are horrified and impressed in equal measure. Timon shows them the truth without embellishment, the exploitation, the subjugation, the cultural destruction, but also the infrastructure, the legal systems, the spread of technology and ideas. High Chancellor Vixera of the Council leans forward, her crystalline eyes gleaming. She demands to know how this relates to modern humanity's fitness to govern. Timon promises the answer will come, but first they must understand not just how the empire rose, but how it fell. The strain, the third session, reveals the cracks in the empire. Timon's team, now joined by historian Minji Lee, presents the turning points. They show how the British Empire reached its maximum extent after the First World War, controlling nearly 460 million people across every inhabited continent. But the session focuses on what the aliens find most alien, the concept of resistance. Minji explains how colonized peoples, from India to Africa to the Caribbean, began demanding their freedom. How leaders like Gandhi weaponized nonviolence against an empire built on military might. How the Second World War bankrupted Britain and shattered the illusion of European invincibility. The Varathian scholar Kelthros objects. In galactic history, empires fall through conquest or catastrophe, not through releasing territory voluntarily. He accuses Timon of fabricating data. It is Hannah who responds, displaying financial records, political documents, and eyewitness accounts. She shows how Britain, exhausted and economically ruined, faced an impossible choice: hold the empire through increasingly brutal suppression or grant independence and try to maintain influence through diplomacy. The council chambers fill with debate. Several species argue that releasing conquered territory is weakness. Others see it as strategic adaptation. Timon lets them argue, knowing that the real lesson is still to come. The transformation in the fourth session, Timon reveals what happened after the empire ended. Working with cultural analyst Ji-Hoon Kwan and economist Sora Yoon, he demonstrates how the British Empire didn't simply disappear but transformed. They show the formation of the Commonwealth, a voluntary association of former colonies in Britain. No military control, no economic extraction, just cooperation and shared history. Some former colonies prospered, others struggled, but they did so as independent nations. More importantly, Timon displays how Britain itself changed, how it grappled with its imperial legacy, how immigration from former colonies reshaped British culture, how the nation found a new identity beyond empire. He shows the decades of debate, the cultural conflicts, the painful reconciliations. Ambassador Gorvesh asks the crucial question: did Britain learn from its imperial experience? Timon's answer is nuanced. He shows both Britain's continued influence through soft power and its ongoing struggles with post-imperial identity. He presents the good and the bad without judgment. Then Jae-hoon reveals the deeper pattern. He demonstrates how the single empire's rise and fall, influenced human philosophy about expansion, governance, and power. How humanity learned that empires built on subjugation inevitably crumble, while those built on mutual benefit can endure. The council grows quiet, beginning to understand where Timon is leading them. The legacy, the final session, begins not with Timon, but with Hana. She projects a comparison that makes the council gasp. She overlays the expansion patterns of the British Empire with those of three current galactic powers, including the Varathian domain that Caltharus represents. The similarities are undeniable. The same exploitation of less advanced worlds. The same extraction of resources. The same imposition of culture and governance. And Hana demonstrates with cold data the same growing resistance and economic strain. Timon takes the floor. He does not gloat. Instead, he explains that humanity's understanding of empire comes not from building the perfect one, but from watching one rise and fall completely. Britain's empire lasted roughly 400 years from true beginning to end. Humans alive today can study the entire life cycle, learn from every mistake, and understand the inevitable trajectory of forced expansion. He then presents humanity's own expansion into space, slower than most species, focused on cooperation rather than conquest, building alliances instead of subjugating populations. Not perfect, he admits, but informed by the hard lessons of history. SORA projects humanity's proposal for new expansion protocols. They are based on consent, mutual benefit, and the rights of less advanced civilizations to develop at their own pace. The protocols include economic support without exploitation and cultural exchange without domination. Caltharus stands to object, but Chancellor Vexera silences him. She has been consulting with her advisors, studying the data. She asks Timon one final question. Why should the council believe that any species, including humanity, can resist the temptations of empire? Timon's answer is simple. Humanity doesn't claim to be immune to those temptations. The British Empire proved humans are capable of tremendous ambition and equally tremendous cruelty. But humanity has something most galactic species lack, a complete, documented, and studied example of imperial rise and fall within their own cultural memory. The vote is called. The proposal is not whether humanity keeps their council vote, but whether to adopt human-proposed expansion protocols for the entire interstellar council. The measure passes by a narrow margin. As the session ends, Caltharus approaches Timon privately. The old Varathian admits that his own species' empire is showing the same strains Britain faced in the early 20th century. He asks quietly if humanity would be willing to share more detailed historical analysis. Timon agrees immediately. Walking back to their quarters, Hana asks Timon if he truly believes humanity has learned from the British Empire's mistakes. Timon looks out at the stars and admits he doesn't know. But he knows they have the knowledge to try, and sometimes that's enough. The story of the British Empire, born on a small island on an unremarkable planet, has become a lesson for the galaxy. Not because it was uniquely evil or uniquely noble, but because it was completely, thoroughly human, ambitious, flawed, adaptive, and ultimately finite. And its ending, it taught humanity how to reach for the stars without repeating the mistakes of reaching across the seas. Epilogue 50 years later. The council historians designate the British Empire as a mandatory study subject for all species seeking expansion rights. The Varathian domain peacefully transitioned 17 of its colonies to independent status. Following the Commonwealth model, Timon Park, now retired, receives the Council's highest honor for his contribution to galactic peace. In his acceptance speech, he quotes a British statesman from centuries past, a man named Churchill who witnessed both the height of empire and the beginning of its end. The speech is about the importance of learning from history. because those who failed to do so are doomed to repeat it. The galaxy, it seems, is finally ready to learn,